A new brand has landed here in Malaysia, ready to take the mass premium space by storm. Say hello to Xpeng with its new debut model, the G6, with a size equivalent to a Tesla Model Y, but with prices starting at just 165,000 ringgit and backed by the confidence that comes with a distributor like BERMAZ Motors. This should be a very interesting proposition indeed. My name is AIMAN ABDULLAH, this is Malaysian Motoring, and this is our launch coverage of the new Xpeng G6. Now, the Xpeng G6 arrives in Malaysia with two variants, with the primary difference being driving range as well as charging performance and battery size. So the G6 lineup starts with the 580 Pro, which packs a lithium iron phosphate battery measuring 66 kilowatt hours, which is capable of giving this car a full driving range of 435 kilometers based on the WLTP cycle. Now, while that is already impressive as it stands, there is also now the G6 755 Pro, or the long-range model, which packs an NMC battery measuring 87.5 kilowatt hours, which then gives that car a 570 kilometer WLTP range. There is also a slight difference in terms of charging, because while both of these cars will accept 11 kilowatt AC charging, DC charging is slightly different. So for the G6, the standard range model, you get about 215 kilowatt charging, whereas on the long-range model, it will do 280. As a result, because the battery sizes are different, that does mean that they have identical DC charging times of 10 to 80% of about half an hour. Whereas on 11 kilowatts, you'll be looking at about 6 hours for the regular car and a little bit longer for the larger battery model. Now, aside from that, in terms of exterior specification, these cars are both identical, which means that regardless of which variant you go for, you still get the same design, same exterior specifications, same interior specifications, which means that choosing a G6 for you is entirely based on how you use your car. Now, measuring in at 4.753 meters long, 1.92 meters wide, and 1.65 meters high, the Xpeng G6 comes in at broadly the same dimensions as the Tesla Model Y, which is its primary competitor. However, within this sort of price category, you're also within spitting distance of vehicles like the Aura 07 as well as the BYD Seal, which means that those cars need to be taken into account as well. That said, however, the G6 is ultimately an SUV, which does make it a little bit more practical, especially for families and those who need a little bit more in terms of space and versatility on how to utilize that space. Now, that aside, the Xpeng G6 brings with it a few groundbreaking technologies for the brand, which means that this is ultimately the most cutting-edge vehicle that Xpeng has ever made, and it's the very first to be exported into foreign markets, just like ours. The G6 is a very aerodynamically efficient design, which is why up front you see very few openings and a very smooth set of body panels, all in order to reduce drag and in order to optimize efficiency, which is why these cars, even though the batteries are not particularly large, have particularly noteworthy range, because efficiency has been at the very core of Xpeng's design. As we move down the side, rolling stock is handled by a set of 20-inch alloy wheels, regardless of which variant you go for, and they are wrapped in identical Michelin Pilot Sport EV tires. These should provide adequate performance both in the dry and in the wet, while also reducing the amount of rolling noise, although that has also been aided by a little bit of noise suppression material around the wheel arches. As we move down the side, naturally, we have flush door handles. And what I'd actually like to point out is the variety of cameras around this car. There are something like 13 to 18 sensors around the vehicle itself, which allow the Xpeng G6 to perceive the world around it, which also aids its ADAS functionalities. In addition to having a radar in the front, you also get a set of cameras on either wing. You get a set of cameras at the top of the windscreen. You get more cameras under the wing mirrors, and there's even more cameras and sensors on the back in order to improve this car's ability, again, to perceive the world around it, to ensure that passengers are safe and its ADAS functionalities work flawlessly. Now, if you ask me, this overall coupe-like design is not necessarily the best to my eye. A lot of people don't really like it, but given the fact that this is ultimately a relatively large SUV and aerodynamics is again a critical component of ensuring efficiency of these cars, I will admit that this isn't so bad. The back end of the G6 is also a little bit more resolved than what we've seen from other vehicles within the segment, particularly vehicles like the Tesla Model Y, which have a rather ungainly rear end. I think that this is resolved rather well. You have very prominent Xpeng badging as well as a G6 badge. Again, there is no visual differentiation between the two variants. So again, picking which model is entirely up to how you use your car. Now, I do appreciate the fact that the rear windscreen wiper has been hidden underneath the boot lid spoiler in order to give it a much cleaner look at the rear, and also the cameras have been integrated rather neatly in such a way that it doesn't disrupt the overall design. Now these tail lights are full LED replete with a scrolling indicator, and it takes up the entire width of the tail light. I do appreciate that, but of course because of legislation, when you do open the tailgate, you will find that those lights migrate down to the bumper. Now behind the tailgate you will find about 571 litres of space, which is further expandable via the foldable backrest. Now the rear seats can be folded 60-40 for added practicality, which increases overall cargo capacity to something in excess of 1,500 litres, which means that this is plenty big enough for whatever cargo you might need. Now underneath this boot floor you will find a little bit of space, big enough for you to hide your charging cables and so on, because they've been very smart with integrating the subwoofer for the sound system into the side of the cargo bay, which means that again it doesn't impact any load space underneath. Now this boot opening height can actually be manipulated from within the screen, so if you want it to open higher or lower you can set that should you live in a condo like me and you don't want it to hit the roof. But overall I do think that this is a pretty practical package, so as far as I'm concerned, for that price I can't really knock it. Now the interior of the Xpeng G6 certainly feels like a very upmarket place to be, which really doesn't seem to be in line with its relatively affordable price tag. Now Xpeng is very obvious about the fact that technology is what leads their vehicles forward, which is why up front you get this massive screen which not only has very small bezels but it's also incredibly responsive. Now behind this screen runs an NVIDIA system as well as a Qualcomm chip, which makes this all incredibly responsive. As you can see, the graphics in here are incredibly quick, and you can swap between this live view as well as this assisted view where the car can actually see other spaces around it. It can even figure out parking spaces based on what the cameras can see at any given time. Now beyond that, this car also offers Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, a couple of wireless chargers up here, which means that you can fit a couple of devices up here without having to have a cable, although if you want to run cables, your USB ports live down here. And overall, the system does work quite well. The only trouble I have with it is that, like a lot of modern cars, the air conditioning controls live within the screen. On top of that, the vent controls also live within the screen, which is slightly less practical than you might want. Now, unlike a Tesla, this is not your only screen because you also have an instrument cluster up ahead of you. Now, while this is relatively small, the quality of this screen is noteworthy because it's very pixel dense and it is just as responsive as what we've seen from this central screen. Now, beyond that screen, which gives you all your pertinent information as well as giving you an idea of what the ADAS system sees at any given time, your controls on the steering wheel and the steering column are relatively limited. On the left side, you have your controls for your indicators as well as your wipers, and on the right is your gear selector stalk, very similar to what we've seen before from Aura. Beyond that, you also have buttons on the steering wheel itself. The one on the left controls various functionalities within the screen, the ones on the right limit you to just your infotainment functionalities. But at least the steering wheel is incredibly adjustable, which means it's very easy for you to get a comfortable driving position. Now, talking about that, these two seats are powered, heated and ventilated with memory functionality on both sides. And while this car suffers from the typically Chinese issue where you only have height adjustment and not tilt or angle adjustment, it is at least reasonably comfortable, although you don't have lumbar support. Adjustment for the mirrors also lives within the screen, which is again a touch unfortunate, but it is what it is. And you also have electronic door poppers for the doors themselves. Now, speaking about that, this car does come with frameless doors, which certainly lends more credence to the fact this is an SUV coupe type affair. Now, because this will largely be purchased by people with, let's say, families and stuff like that, practicality is also very well catered for in this car. You have this enormous center bin here, which is about that deep, although it is felt lined without air conditioning vents or any sort of cooling. You get a couple of cup holders here, a huge center bin here, but you don't get a dashboard cubby as you normally would. The door bins are quite large, big enough to fit a 1.5 litre size bottle, despite the fact that these cars come as standard with an X-Opera 18 speaker audio system replete with speakers in the driver's seat in order to give you a truly immersive experience. Now, beyond that, there is one thing about this car that I absolutely cannot stand. That's the fact that while it comes as standard with a glass roof, there is no sunshade. It doesn't come supplied with it, and there isn't an electronic one either, which is just... But I think the real party trick of the Xpeng G6 is actually the back half of the cabin. With the front seats up in my driving position, about 170 centimeters, I have acres of knee room and acres of headroom, measurable about that far. That's actually pretty good. A lot of cars in this segment don't offer that kind of knee room and headroom, and that is down to this car's unique SEPA 2.0 platform, which maximizes the amount of room available for the cabin by optimizing various different features and functions within the car in order to maximize space within the cabin. As you can see, even like this, I can actually cross my legs and I still have plenty of space without scuffing up the seat in front of me, which is very noteworthy. And even though this is an electric car, I have very good under thigh support and I can actually stretch out underneath the seat in front of me should I want to, which means space for passengers back here is certainly no issue at all. Now, in terms of practicality, I still have a decent sized door bin here. I have some rather tight pockets behind the front seats, but at least I get a couple of air conditioning vents via the center, as well as a couple of USB-C ports. Now, if you may have noticed from the front, it actually extends into the rear where all of this car's speakers are hidden away behind fabric, which does lend some pretty good aesthetic qualities in here. And the door cards themselves are all nice and soft, even with stitching down here as well, again to sort of elevate the sense of premiumness within this cabin. All very positive to see. Now, this center armrest is deployable with a couple of cup holders which come out in a lovely damped fashion, again to give this car some semblance of premiumness. And these back seats can also be reclined to quite an alarming degree if you want to have a nap. Now, in addition to that, you also get a couple of ISOFIX mounts for seats in the rear, and because of this enormous legroom, that does mean that a bulky rear-facing child seat should not be an issue at all. Even with a forward-facing child seat, your kids will struggle to kick the back of the seats. Now, I would like to point out the fact that we are filming this car with what's referred to as the grey interior, although frankly it looks more like white. You can option these cars with either a grey or black interior. So if you have kids, for example, and you're worried about scuff marks and the car generally looking dirty, you can opt for the darker interior color scheme, although personally, I think this is pretty good. Now, Xpeng is very proud of their X-Pilot Level 2 semi-autonomy systems, which come as standard on all G6 models. By utilizing 12 cameras as well as sensors, radar, etc., it means that this car has one of the best perceptions of the world around it compared to any other Chinese vehicles currently available on the market, and is certainly among the very best within the EV space. As a result, these cars come as standard with autonomous emergency braking, adaptive cruise control with pedestrian and cyclist detection, automatic high beam, lane keep assist, lane departure warning, as well as various emergency functionalities, including reverse cross-traffic alert with rear AEB. The cameras, as you saw earlier, are of course very high definition, and as a result, it also means the 360 cam on this car is pretty good as well. All stock standard, everything that you should expect from a car that is pushing a little bit past 160,000 ringgit. Another unique feature of the Xpeng G6 is the Xpeng app, which allows you to not only monitor your vehicle, especially while it's charging, you can also lock, unlock the car, open the boot. This is all pretty standard, but moving downwards, you also have vehicle controls that include things like the parking assist, being able to switch the car on and off, check the tire pressures, and even preheat the battery if you intend to DC charge. On top of that, we have this little feature called Intelligent Parking Assist, which allows the vehicle to navigate its way in and out of parking spaces depending on whether or not a parking space is defined enough for the vehicle to understand it. Now, this feature is particularly noteworthy because it does do a little bit more than what we've seen from other intelligent parking features in the past, where not only is it completely remote via the app, but it can also navigate in and out of parking spaces even when it's too tight, where it's not just a matter of moving in and out. This makes it easily one of the smartest intelligent parking features currently available on the market, and certainly outdoes Tesla's Summon feature, which still doesn't work in Malaysia. Now, the Xpeng G6 will be available in Malaysia, as we said earlier, in two variants, with the entry-level model starting at 165,000 ringgit, whereas the long-range model will go up to 185,000 ringgit. In addition to that, for an additional 4,000 ringgit, you can add on an 11 kilowatt home wall box to charge your car at up to 7 kilowatts, or for 5,000 ringgit extra, you can add an 11 kilowatt three-phase wall box. All, again, within specification within the car, and all specified to work with BERMAZ products. Now, because, again, this is a BERMAZ distributed car, it means it comes as standard with a 5-year 120,000 kilometer warranty, as well as a separate 8-year 160,000 kilometer warranty for the EV battery, as well as the high voltage components. Now, because again Xpeng is distributed exclusively in Malaysia via BERMAZ, we do expect to see a relatively wide service network available across the country, which means that no matter where it is you're buying these cars, they will be delivered and serviced to you somewhere local, which is a hell of a lot better than what you get from Tesla. Let us know what you think about the new Xpeng G6 in the comment section below. Do you like the way this car looks? Do you think the pricing is accurate? And more importantly, grey or black interior? I'd certainly like to hear from you. In any case, that concludes our launch coverage of the new Xpeng G6. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell icon so notified every time we make a new upload. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and you can join our new WhatsApp channel. All the links are in the description below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Take care and stay safe.